Hello! After a brief summer hiatus, we are returning with some new backyard briefings, and I hope you'll enjoy watching the seasons change from summer to fall. And with that, the plants and the animals and the birds will be changing with it, and it'll be fun to watch that and talk about what's happening. So thanks so much for tuning in. One of the signs of late summer in Wyoming is fire season. You can feel that the smoke is in the air. You can probably see it a little bit around you. Fire is a very natural part of the ecosystem here in the West, and as you can see in this area, this place has burned pretty recently, and this is what it looks like a couple months after a fire burns. You can see some areas were burned more heavily than others, and we also have some regeneration already with some green plants coming up. So fire is natural. A lot of plants are used to this kind of a disturbance on the landscape, and many plants thrive right after a fire. So we're in a landscape here that was burned more than a decade ago, and you can still see some remnants of that fire here on the landscape. You see these dead snags that are still charred. Many of them have already fallen to the ground. But for the most part, this area has rejuvenated and come back from that fire. One of the plants that does really well after a fire is the quaking aspen here. And you can see this whole grove of quaking aspens that have grown up since that fire burned through. Quaking aspens are a plant species that actually thrives in a fire environment. They need fire to come through every 25 to 50 years to kind of clean out the stand and let new aspens grow up again. Now, aspens are also a really important tree to this area because they provide some great forage for animals. They like to eat on the leaves. They also love to eat the bark of these aspens. And this deciduous tree also allows grass and other berries and things to grow up in its on the ground around underneath its canopy. So they're actually a really important little community for lots of different kinds of animals, including elk, deer, beaver, and lots of small rodents too. Another plant that does very, very well after a fire is a tree called the lodgepole pine. And this is a small little lodgepole pine, and I can tell it's a lodgepole pine because its needles come in packages. And in this case, there are 2 needles in the package. So that tells me it's a lodgepole pine. And these trees, as I said, do very well in fire. One of the reasons that they sprout up right after a fire is because they produce what's called a serotinous cone. And a serotinous cone is covered in wax. So it only opens up when it's hot enough to melt that wax after a fire. And then that wax melts and the cones release those seeds. Now, lodgepole pines also have regular cones that they release seeds every year, but on those rare occasions where you have a fire burn through, the serotinous cones are ready to release those seeds and be one of the first colonizers of that site. As I mentioned previously, there are many animals that do really well after a fire. Woodpeckers, including this black-backed woodpecker, are some of those species. They come into a recently burned area and find insects that are feeding and laying eggs on the burned out trees, as you can see here. We have really just scratched the surface about the benefits of wildfires in the West, but I hope it helps you breathe a little easier, even in this smoke-filled air, to know that the fires that might look like this could create something like this. Thanks for listening.